Greetings from International Energy Agency headquarters in Paris. The conflict in the Middle East is having significant impacts on global oil and gas markets, with major implications for energy security, energy affordability, and the global economy. For oil, the Strait of Hormuz normally provides a route to market for 15 million barrels per day of the global crude oil supply and another 5 million barrels per day of oil products. This amounts to around 25% of the world's oil trade via sea. And now, the flows of oil, gas, and other commodities through the strait have all but stopped. Without sufficient routes to market and with no more available storage, Middle East oil producers have started to reduce production. And we have seen further attacks and damage to energy and energy-related infrastructure. Refinery operations have also been disrupted, with major implications for jet fuel and diesel supplies in particular. The situation in natural gas markets is also very challenging. There are few options to replace the missing LNG cargoes from Qatar and the Emirates. Global energy supply has been reduced by around 20%, and underlying market balances coming into this conflict were even tighter than in the case of oil. Asia is the most severely affected region for gas. Higher income countries in Asia are competing hard with Europe and other importers for available LNG cargoes. But also some price-sensitive developing economies are simply short of natural gas and are forced to ration consumption. Dear colleagues, energy security is the founding mandate of the International Energy Agency. And when oil markets have faced major disruptions in the past, the IEA has taken collective action to provide extra supplies. We have done this.
Okay. So the thing is, these people are not.
And deeply alarming. The Home Secretary has approved a police request to ban the Al-Quds Day March in London over fears of serious public disorder. The Met Police warned the scale of the protests and counter-protests posed a significant risk amid tensions in the Middle East. Organisers insist, though, the annual march is peaceful and is a pro-Palestinian demonstration that they say will instead be held as a static protest. It's the first time a protest march has been banned in London since 2012. Hereditary peers will lose their automatic seats in the House of Lords before the next King's Speech. Parliament has approved legislation ending the system that currently allows 92 peers to sit and vote in the upper chamber. The government says the reforms ensure no one sits in Parliament purely by inheritance, but opposition figures say the change marks the end of more than 7 centuries of hereditary service. And the Bank of England has confirmed Sir Winston Churchill will be removed from banknotes in a future redesign. Instead, the central bank plans to feature British wildlife on the next series of notes. The public will soon be asked which animals should appear on the new 5, 10, 20 and £50 notes. The change follows a consultation which found nature was the most popular theme. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
Thank you very much indeed, Sam. Now, top story today, Keir Starmer has been hit by a fresh Mandelson storm as the first papers, 200 pages of it, on the Labour grandees vetting were finally released. Bombshell documents show that Peter Mandelson demanded an astonishing £547,000 of tax-free, taxpayer-funded payoff after being sacked as the US shamed ambassador. And the Prime Minister did know that he stayed friends with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Well, speaking a short moment ago, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said the files show the Prime Minister has not been honest with the British public.
For so long, the Prime Minister has tried to make this about Peter Mandelson's lies. What this shows is that it is Keir Starmer himself who has lied repeatedly since the very start to the whole country about what he knew, when and how. And these files have exposed the fact that the Prime Minister has not been honest with the country or with the Commons about the extent to which he knew about this relationship.
And one of the things that we've seen here is that Mandelson asked for more than £500,000 as a payoff after his sacking. He received £75,000, much less, but still that much taxpayer money. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that this is yet another indictment of Keir Starmer's judgment. He wants to make this all about Peter Mandelson asking for money. The fact is, he wouldn't have been paying out that severance package if he hadn't appointed him in the first place. And the vetting that we have now seen, the documents that we have now seen, have shown that the Prime Minister should never have made this decision. He has not been honest with the country. He's not been honest with Parliament about what he knew. Now he's complaining about the severance package, but the fact is he's the one who signed it off in the first place.
That's Kemi Badenoch there responding a short while ago to the Peter Mandelson files, the ongoing scandal. Let's have a ding-dong in the studio. I'm joined by GB News' political editor Chris Hope, Reform UK's Chief Whip MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Chris, let's start with you. Kemi Badenoch there putting the boot into Keir Starmer. Let's face it, an easy target today. The files are damning, but the biggest thing that people are really sticking in their craw today is the astonishing brass neck payout that Manley was demanding, over £500,000 worth of taxpayer wonga.
And Kemi Badenoch making those points in an interview right now in Central Lobby in Parliament, because all this came out after PMQs. Now, during Prime Minister's questions, the Tory leader went on the issue of fuel duty. Why won't the government commit to that not going up again in September? Instead, the real damage here to the Prime Minister, there's written evidence in these documents here, showing the PM was warned about the appointment of Peter Mandelson because of the things Jeffrey Epstein, still went ahead, and that is concerning. It was called weirdly swift in terms of the process after Mandelson resigned by Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor. So it is concerning here, and that's why it's being raised by Kemi Badenoch. And on the payoff, she's saying, well, that was signed off by officials, yes, but it's on the PM's watch. He's in charge. Why was £34,000 out of £70,000 a severance payment that didn't need to be paid? That's our tax money. Why did it happen? Questions be answered.
And it's worth pointing out this is the first wave of messages. The next lot is going to be the WhatsApps, and we all know what politicians get up to. Lee Anderson knows about this late at night after a few tugs on the wine box.
Goodness gracious. Well, I can't publish my WhatsApps from Lee Anderson. That'd be too far too rude.
I mean, I've got actually disappearing messages from Chopper on my WhatsApp. But, you're quite right. There's probably, Martin, there's probably going to be some embarrassing WhatsApp messages on there. But this Peter Mandelson, he's been mired in scandal for 30 years now. Everybody in the country knows what he is. Yet this Prime Minister has shown poor judgment once again by giving him this job as the ambassador to the United States. We all knew everybody in the studio, everybody out there in the real world knew it was going to end in scandal. It has ended in scandal. And the brass neck of the man to want a huge payout. What he needs to do now, Martin, is crawl back to whatever rock he lived under, stay there and keep out of our lives for good.
But you say that, the answer. I've got on my phone a photograph here of your leader, Nigel Farage, laughing with Lord Mandelson at the July the 4th party at the US Embassy last year. Didn't all politicians meet with him and get on with him until it became, frankly, difficult?
When you work in politics, Choppers, you know, you have to get on with people. There's people I don't like in that place over there, but you have to work with them for the greater good of the country. And there is some people in that place I think shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that's the photo. I mean,
well, there you go. You were probably laughing at the appointment he got. That's Nigel were probably laughing at.
But everyone laughed along with Mandelson until it became, and there were people who supported his appointment. I think even Nigel Farage at some point appointed him.
Well, I don't know about Nigel supporting his appointment. I certainly did.
So you work with him, and
you have to work with. You have to work, Nigel, with what you've got. And if he's the ambassador to the United States, you have to work with him. And we didn't choose him; it was a prime minister.
Okay, let's move on to a story that's broken in these past few moments, and that is there's been a huge conversation about the emergency oil reserves. The G7, Rachel Reeves had a meeting with them earlier this week, and I believe that has happened. They've miraculously found millions of barrels of oil. Chris, tell us all about it.
Not miraculous. This is the reserve kept in abeyance by the G7 countries in case of a crisis in the Gulf of the Strait of Hormuz, as we're seeing now. So 400 million barrels of oil will be made available to the market, with the UK adding in 13.5 million barrels. What that means for viewers and listeners at home is it should bring down, or at least stop increasing, the fuel price, because it is going up because of concerns about oil supply. So, because if you believe it's a short-term issue, this war in Iran, going what Donald Trump said this week, you believe it is, maybe it's wise now to try and bring down the increase in the oil and gas price.
Ed Miliband's piped up in this statement here, saying with this action, the UK is playing our part in working with our international allies to address the disruption in oil markets. Lee Anderson, Ed Miliband finally waking up. The whole country can't run on propellers and solar panels.
Yeah, but it's people like Ed Miliband that are disrupting our oil markets and our energy security. I mean, we're not firing up our windmills and solar panels and wind power when we've got this crisis on, Martin. We're looking at getting extra oil into the country. It just shows once again how weak our energy policy has been for not just the past 18 months, but the past 20 or 30 years. We need fossil fuels in this country, and this conflict in Iran now has proved more than ever how dependent we are on fossil fuels. We need it. We need to drill, baby, drill, mate. That's what we need to do, and frack in this country.
But if we can actually wean ourselves off fossil
here we
fuels,
go again.
And use nuclear, wind, and solar, we're going to be a lot better off in the long run than we are now. We won't face crises like this if we were self-sufficient.
I'm pretty sure, Nigel, that some mad mullah in Iran is going to wait till we wean ourselves off of fossil fuels to start the next conflict.
Well, I don't think that Iran started this conflict.
I think they have. They're a threat to the world. Nearly every single terrorist attack anywhere in the world, they're somewhere behind it. They've started this conflict. Make no bones.
The irony is the soaring oil and gas price actually supports investing in net zero, because it's so expensive to buy oil and gas. It makes windmills more affordable.
Well, just drill our own then, Chopper. We've got plenty in the North Sea. We've got plenty of gas in Lincolnshire, by the way, which we can pipe straight into some of our power stations.
Under voters, under reform voters, do they want to have those?
You know what? You know, if you do this sensibly, like they do in America, you know, there is a way in this country to frack gas, to frack natural gas, and give away gas or even discounted gas to local businesses and local communities. I'm sure some communities in my neck of the wood would like to have cheaper fuel bills.
I think this should be put to the public, don't you? I mean, and it probably will be at the next general election. You know, we're now seeing a sudden awakening of it from the Conservatives, who in power, you know, we're dead set on 2050, 2030, gas boilers being replaced, petrol cars being replaced. They've suddenly woken up in opposition that it was disaster. They've done a U-turn on that. And I think the British public, during conflicts like this, they see everything going up in price and think, well, why can't we be energy sovereign?
Well, exactly right. I mean, this net zero has been forced onto people. I mean, I know it was in the Tory manifesto, and I know the Tories brought it in, but, you know, Ed Miliband is put it on steroids, you know.
And this was from a family car in a town near Tehran. At different times, Donald Trump has mused that all this is about regime change, or about unconditional surrender, or to install a compliant government, or to encourage a popular uprising. At the border with Turkey, a steady stream of Iranians had decided not to risk their lives in the bombing, waiting to find out.
Sometimes we felt like we were dying, but it was nearby.
There's a lot of bombing, a lot of
Fire.
even around 500 meters around our house, something like some bomb dropped and then a full building shattered.
In Florida on Monday, Donald Trump, with his envoy Steve Witkoff, was not focusing on regime change, as the Iranian regime is much more resilient than they expected. The economic
كرؤساء كقيادة في هذه الدول هذا مش القاعد السياسي. بدنا نفهم يعني آية الله العظمى الإمام خامنئي الذي استشهد هو ليس قاعدا سياسيا، هو قاعدا دينيا على مستوى البلدان الإسلامية وأيضا طائف الشيعي.
هل يلتزم المرشد الأعلى الجديد بالفتوى الصادرة عن الإمام الراحل بمسألة تحريم وحظر إنتاج المواد النووية أو تخزينها بشكل أو آخر الصادرة في وقت من عدة سنوات؟
بلا شك، لأنه هو تربت على يد والده الشهيد ودرس دراسة في مجال السياسة، في مجال الاقتصاد، في مجال العلوم القديمة الحوضوية لدى والدها، وهو كان يمسك القرار المكتب.
يعني سيلتزم
طبعا.
قالت وكالة الطاقة الدولية أن الدول الأعضاء ستطلق 400 مليون برميل من النفط من احتياطياتها، وهو أكبر إصدار من هذا النوع على الإطلاق للتخفيف من تأثير الحرب في الشرق الأوسط. وقال المدير التنفيذي للوكالة في بيان بأن قرار الدول الأعضاء جاء استجابة للتحديات التي يواجهها سوق النفط الذي ارتفعت أسعاره بشدة على خلفية الحرب الأمريكية الإسرائيلية مع إيران. أبحرت الفرقاطة HMS دراغون متجهة إلى قبرص بعد أكثر من أسبوع على استهداف قاعدة جوية تابعة لسلاح الجو الملكي البريطاني في الجزيرة بطائرة إيرانية مسيرة.
مر أسبوع منذ أن أعلنت الحكومة البريطانية عزمها إرسال المدمرة HMS دراغون إلى البحر الأبيض المتوسط. أخيرا غادرت السفينة ميناء بورتسموث متجهة إلى منطقة يحتمل أن تكون خطرة. خلال الأسبوع الماضي عمل الطواقم البحرية الملكية على تجهيز واحدة من أكثر مدمرات الدفاع الجوي تطورا لديها، حيث جرى تحميلها بالمؤن والذخيرة استعدادا للمهمة. هنا اصطف المهنئون وعائلات أفراد الطاقم البالغ عددهم نحو 200 بحار لتوديعهم قبل الانطلاق. كان الشعور بالفخر واضحا لدى دارين سميث الذي يشارك ابنه جورج في أول مهمة كبرى له على متن السفينة.
أعتقد أننا بذلنا جهدا كبيرا لإرسال السفينة خلال 8 أيام فقط، ومهما قيل في الصحافة سابقا أرى أن هذا يعد التزاما جيدا. كما تعلمون وضع البحرية ليس في أفضل حالاته، لكن هذه هي الظروف الحالية.
يسعدني أنها غادرت أخيرا، خير من عدم الوصول أبدا.
هذا ومن المتوقع أن تستغرق المدمرة البريطانية دراغون قرابة أسبوع حتى تصل إلى السواحل القبرصية، وقد عززت الحكومة الإجراءات الأمنية هناك تحسبا لأي تداعيات بعد الهجوم الذي شنته الولايات المتحدة وإسرائيل على إيران، فأرسلت مزيدا من الطائرات المقاتلة وأنظمة الدفاع الجوي. لم يمنع ذلك من تمكن طائرة مسيرة من إصابة قاعدة جوية تابعة لسلاح الجو الملكي البريطاني، ما أدى إلى إحداث ثقب في أحد حظائر الطائرات، مما أثار تساؤلات حول ما إذا كان ينبغي إرسال سفينة حربية في وقت أبكر. ويبدو أن انخراط بريطانيا في هذا الصراع يزداد تدريجيا، ففي قاعدة سلاح الجو الملكي البريطاني فيرفورد بمقاطعة غلوسترشاير أقلعت قاذفات أمريكية لتنفيذ أولى مهامها انطلاقا من الأراضي البريطانية. وكانت الحكومة البريطانية قد رفضت في البداية طلبا بالسماح باستخدام القواعد البريطانية، لكنها غيرت موقفها لاحقا بعد رد إيران. ورغم ذلك لا تزال الحكومة تؤكد أن هذه العمليات ذات طابع دفاعي، وأن بريطانيا ليست طرفا مباشرا في الحرب، لكن المخاوف من اتساع رقعة التصعيد لا تزال قائمة، حيث وضعت الحكومة سفينة أخرى في حالة تأهب، مشيرة إلى أن سفينة الإمداد الملكي لامباي الموجودة حاليا في جبل طارق يجري تجهيزها كإجراء احترازي لاحتمال إجلاء مواطنين من المنطقة. هذا ويرى مراقبون أن هذه التطورات تمثل دليلا إضافيا على أن البقاء على الحياد في هذا الصراع أصبح أمرا أكثر صعوبة.
قالت البحرين إن غارة إيرانية تسببت في أضرار لمحطة لتحلية المياه في البلاد. كانت هذه هي المرة الأولى التي تعلن فيها دولة خليجية عن استهداف مثل هذه المنشأة خلال الحرب الحالية. تقرير مراسل BBC لشؤون التكنولوجيا زميلي محمد طه يشرح التفاصيل.
هل يمكن أن تتحول الحرب في المنطقة إلى أزمة مياه؟ في الخليج مياه الشرب لا تأتي من الأنهار أو الأمطار بل من محطات تحلية مياه البحر. ومع تصاعد الحرب في إيران يحذر خبراء من أن هذه المنشآت قد تصبح أهدافا حساسة. تقنيا تعمل معظم هذه المحطات بتقنية التناضح العكسي، يتم سحب مياه البحر ثم دفعها تحت ضغط عال عبر أغشية دقيقة جدا تفصل الملح عن الماء العذب. أي ضرر في أنظمة الضخ أو الطاقة يمكن أن يوقف العملية بالكامل. المشكلة أن مدن الخليج تعتمد على هذه المحطات بشكل شبه كامل. في الكويت مثلا تحصل على 90% من مياهها عبر التحلية، بينما تعتمد دول أخرى بدرجات كبيرة على نفس التقنية لتأمين مياه الشرب. أكبر محطات التحلية في الخليج تشمل رأس الخير في السعودية بطاقة أكثر من 1,000,000 متر مكعب يوميا من المياه المحلاة، ثم الطويلة بالإمارات بنحو 900,000 متر مكعب يوميا، ثم الشعيبة بالسعودية بنحو 880,000 متر مكعب يوميا، ثم جبل علي في دبي بنحو 640,000 متر مكعب يوميا. لكن الخطر ليس فقط تقنيا بل بيئي أيضا، فتعطل المحطات قد يسبب نقصا سريعا في المياه لمدن كاملة، بينما قد يؤدي تضرر هذه المحطات إلى تسرب كميات كبيرة من المياه المحلاة المركزة أو ما يعرف بالبراين إلى الخليج، ما يهدد الحياة البحرية.
قد تكون محطات تحلية المياه في جميع أنحاء الخليج عرضة للخطر من خلال مسارات متعددة، حيث تشير بيانات الاستخبارات المائية العالمية لعام 2023 إلى وجود نحو 815 محطة تحلية مياه على الساحل الجنوبي للخليج العربي في دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي. لذا تعتمد هذه الدول على مياه البحر من الخليج العربي، وبعض هذه المحطات مركزية للغاية، مثل محطة الطويلة في الإمارات العربية المتحدة التي تخدم نحو 1,000,000 نسمة، ومحطة جبل علي للطاقة التي تخدم 500,000 نسمة في دبي. هذه المحطات ليست عرضة لهجمات الصواريخ والطائرات المسيرة على المحطات نفسها فحسب، بل إن الهجمات على محطات توليد الطاقة التي تغذيها ستؤدي إلى انقطاع التيار الكهربائي وإمدادات المياه، وقد تتعرض شبكة التوزيع للاختراق، كما قد تتضرر أو تدمر مآخذ مياه البحر. في أقصى الحالات
From inside Iran, Behrang, at the moment, are you hearing?
So we are hearing that there are more attacks on Tehran, also in the town of Marivan in western Iran, in the Kurdish region, and also a hospital was closed in the city of Bushehr on the Persian Gulf. This is the city that hosts Iran's only nuclear power station. After it was itself or somewhere close to it was attacked, so they had to close that hospital. Also in the past hour or so, we are hearing reports from from the media in Iran that some of the checkpoints set up in cities like Tehran that were set up by the security forces and Basij militia that were terrorizing people, they have been attacked by drones, which kind of suggests that maybe someone has assets inside Iran and has been able to attack them with those drones.
Okay, that is interesting. Where would you summarize the mood of Iranians about this war at the moment? I should say we heard some people supporting the American action in talking to Dan Johnson there. Later, we're going to hear from diaspora Iranians here who are saying, look, you may be helping the regime by continuing bombing and people will rally around. Where do you feel it is, Baron?
Defiance, determination, and despair. There is a section of the population in Iran who fully supports the Islamic Republic and believes this is a holy state, and they are defiant and they think that Iran should inflict as much pain on Israel, the United States, and its allies so they would stop this war. There is determination amongst those who want regime change at any cost and believe that they can rebuild the country, and this war is a price worth paying. And there is this third sort of section of the population who are quite skeptical. They want a regime change, they want wholesale change in Iran, but they are not sure that this war is bringing that, because 2 months ago when we had those nationwide protests in Iran where something like between 7,000 to more than 30,000 people were killed in only 2 days, and we don't know exact numbers. They were not killed by drones, they were not killed by ballistic missiles or Iranian Navy. They were killed by people who believe in the regime and have guns and shoot at the protesters.
I think we can understand that. Just very, very briefly, Mujtaba Khamenei, he appears to be alive. He's the supreme leader. They declared him, but no one's really seeing him. And then we hear maybe he has been injured. What's the latest on him and his condition?
Some Iranian, state-owned or state-aligned media are calling him John Baz, which is a term used for the veterans who have been injured permanently in the war, maybe lost a limb or something. So it seems like he has been seriously injured, but as you said, we haven't seen him, so we don't know exactly how he is and whether he's conscious or not, because we haven't even seen a written statement from him yet.
Behrang Tajdin, thank you, from BBC Persian, an update.
been a number of key developments on day 12, so let's get you up to speed, particularly when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. 3 commercial ships have been hit by projectiles in the Gulf in the space of just a few hours. 2 were off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, the 3rd in the Strait of Hormuz. At least 20 crew members were rescued from this Thai-flagged cargo ship after it was hit and caught fire. And the US military has also been conducting its own strikes, claiming it's eliminated 16 Iranian mine-laying ships that were threatening the strait and the safety of the ships in the region. Well, the blockade of the strait is causing major issues for global oil supplies, with prices rising again today. And in response, the 32 member countries of the International Energy Agency have announced the biggest release of oil reserves in its history. The nations have unanimously agreed today to make 400 million barrels of oil from their emergency reserves available to the market. Well, here's the IEA Director, Fatih Birol.
This is a major action aiming to alleviate the immediate impacts of the disruption in markets. But, to be clear, the most important thing for a return to stable flows of oil and gas is the resumption of transit through the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, our business correspondent Michelle Fleury is in New York and explains the significance of this decision.
The fact that they're doing the biggest strategic release of oil reserves in its history, double anything we've seen before in terms of size, they're trying to make a statement here. And I think it underscores the seriousness of the situation when you've got the Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for about a fifth of the world's oil passing through there. It expresses the concern, but it's in the detail as always. And crucially, they say that they are not releasing details of the time frame or the specific amounts. So in other words, will this be drip, drip, drip? Will there be a big release in one go? And I think in part, you take that together with the fact that we don't know how long the conflict is going to last. And if you look at what has happened to Brent crude, initially, obviously, there was some optimism, and so it helped bring down the price of oil. That didn't last long, and Brent crude is back up to $90 a barrel right now.
Michelle Fleury. Well, Torbjörn Soldvedt is the principal Middle East analyst at the global risk consultancy firm Verisk Maplecroft, and he says that we will likely see heightened oil and gas prices for as long as this conflict continues.
In terms of the disruption that we've seen, that is pretty much unprecedented. We've never seen, this many barrels suddenly taken off the market. So the response has to be proportionate. We haven't seen a significant easing of oil prices today. I think the market probably was expecting that there would be some measures taken, and so most likely we are going to see, heightened oil and gas prices for as long as this conflict continues. We still see that Iran is able to pose a significant threat, not just to shipping, but also energy infrastructure in the region, things like ports and refineries. So there is this twofold threat that still remains unresolved.
Well, Iran's sports minister says that his nation cannot take part in this summer's World Cup in North America under any circumstances. Iran had been due to play all 3 of their group games at this summer's finals in the US and could even face the co-hosts in the round of 32 if both finished second in their group. However, the sports minister appeared to rule out the possibility of them taking part.
Given that this corrupt government has assassinated our leader, under no circumstances do we have the appropriate conditions to participate in the World Cup. Our boys are not safe, and conditions for participation do not exist, taking into account the evil deeds they have committed towards Iran. Over the past 8 or 9 months, 2 wars have been imposed on us, and several thousand of our people have been killed and martyred. Therefore, we definitely do not have the possibility for participation.
we're going to return to the war in the Middle East. President Trump has been answering questions about the U.S. military operation. He said that the United States could do a lot worse. Here he is.
What more do you need to do militarily for this operation to end? More of the same, and we'll see how that all comes out. Right now, they've lost their Navy, they've lost their Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft apparatus at all, they have no radar, their leaders are gone, and we could do a lot worse to one another. We're leaving certain things that if we take them out, or we could take them out by this afternoon, in fact, within an hour, they literally would never be able to build that country back.
A new report says that the military investigation has found that the United States struck the school in Iran. As Commander-in-Chief, do you take responsibility for that?
That is what?
As Commander-in-Chief, do you
for what?
For the strike on the school in Iran? A new report says the military investigation has found it was the United States that struck the school.
I don't know about
that. So Donald Trump there taking questions, trying to answer some questions or trying to avoid them as well there. Now in Iran, the United States Central Command says that US forces have conducted airstrikes on more than 5,500 targets inside the country. And today Israel says it's launched new wide-scale waves of strikes on Iran, which it says targeted infrastructure. The Iranian Red Crescent Society says that nearly 20,000 civilian buildings, including at least 16,000 residential units, have been affected after more than 12 days of war. And this morning, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said that it had begun its 35th wave of attacks. Barang Tajdin from the BBC Persian service has the latest.
A couple of hours ago, they released a statement saying that they have started actually 38th wave of attacks on Israel and also neighboring countries, where they claim that these are American targets because these are facilities used by the American forces. But in Iran, we have had more reports of attacks on Tehran and also on the city of Marivan in western Iran, and a hospital has closed in the southern city of Bushehr on the Persian Gulf. Bushehr is the same city that hosts Iran's only nuclear power plant, and also Rosatom, which is the Russian company that is involved in nuclear power generation, has said that it has taken out 150 members of staff from the Bushehr power plant and taken them back to Russia. So that is what is happening in terms of war. And from what we are hearing from people in Iran is that since yesterday, when the chief of Iranian police kind of threatened everyone that if they share any pictures or videos with the likes of BBC Persian or even post them on social media, they will be targeted and prosecuted and punished. We are hearing messages from people who are very reluctant in terms of sharing pictures and videos. So our work in terms of finding out exactly what is going on and verifying that has become even more difficult. And also people are talking about, many cities having some sort of a military atmosphere. There are many checkpoints, guarded by Basij militia, which makes it very difficult to kind of live in the city or, go around in the city.
Barang Tajdin from the BBC Persian service. Well, Israel has also continued hitting Beirut, targeting sites of the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. The health ministry there says 570 people have been killed since the strikes began. Nina Sinjab is in Beirut and explains what she's been experiencing.
Well, there are attacks day and night here in Lebanon, whether in the south of the capital Beirut or in the south of the country. But these attacks are also going beyond Hezbollah-controlled area or strongholds. This morning around 5 a.m. there was an attack in Aisha Bakar neighborhood, not far from where I live, which actually shook the country when it started. It was launched from the sea, and it's a residential area, came without without a notice. The Israelis say that this is an attack targeting a number of the Islamic group. It targeted 3 apartments in one residential building. But this is an area in the center of the capital, in the center of Beirut. It's a residential area filled with people that have been living there for ages, and they woke up to this strike. Some have been killed, and this is not the first time that the Israelis would target a residential area in the center of Beirut without prior notice. Earlier in the week, there was an attack on a hotel nearby by the seaside. The Israelis said they've targeted Iranian Revolutionary Guards, which actually the Iranians came out yesterday to say that 4 Iranian diplomats were killed in this attack on the hotel, Ramada Hotel. But these kind of attacks are sending, shock and fear waves among the Lebanese that nowhere is safe for them. Even those who've been displaced from their homes, and they've reached now 700,000. They feel unsafe because when they've reached a hotel to seek safety, there was an attack as well. The number of people killed so far have reached over 500, and as I mentioned, more than 700,000 are now displaced. The government provided some schools as shelters, but hundreds of thousands are stranded in the streets in open air, nowhere to go, and no idea when to go back home if their homes are still standing.
Lena Sinjab there in Beirut. Well, 3 commercial ships have been attacked in the Gulf as the conflict with Iran continues to threaten one of the most important shipping lanes for oil in the world. 2 were off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, the 3rd in the Strait of Hormuz. At least 20 crew members were rescued from this Thai-flagged cargo ship after it was hit and caught fire. And around 3,000 ships a month would normally pass through the Strait of Hormuz. It's just 21 miles across at its narrowest point, and in normal times, around 1/5 of the world's daily supply of oil and gas passes through the strait. So really important. So let's find out the very latest of what is happening there. BBC Verified's Merlin Thomas is here. So just bring us up to date with the most recent details.
Well, as you say, one of the world's most important global trade routes has now become one of the most dangerous for ships to cross through right now. And normally, as you said, around 1/4 of all of global maritime oil flows through this strait, and that's about 20 million barrels a day. But the international shipping website Marine Traffic has said that just 4 ships have passed through the strait since Monday. Now, just to be kind of clear about this, tracking these ships has been really difficult because some of them may have turned off their onboard trackers, or sometimes they give out misleading locations as Iran continues to target these vessels that are crossing through. And overnight, at least 3 commercial ships were damaged by unknown projectiles in the area. Now, this was reported by both the UK MTO, so that's the Government Maritime Authority, as well as the maritime security firm Vanguard. And we've been able to corroborate some of these details, especially with one particular vessel, because the Royal Thai Navy released some photos, and it shows one vessel called the Mayuri Nari, which was attacked. You can see smoke plumes rising from the deck of the ship, and Vanguard, that security firm, actually said that the Iranian military reported that this vessel had ignored warnings not to transit without their own permission. So these are the kind of challenges that vessels are going through in order to cross this strait.
And of course, there's been a lot of will US Navy ships accompany these vessels, these cargo ships. What has Donald Trump been saying about that potentially?
Well, President Trump has been interesting on the kind of messaging around what has happened to the Navy itself. So he has said that the Navy has been completely destroyed. He said it was gone, to be specific. But then today, for example, the US said that it was still attacking it. The US said it was eliminating 16 mine-laying ships in the strait. Now, we've spoken to an intelligence firm, Jane's, and they assessed that Iran's conventional navy has effectively been put out of action, with few naval vessels of any kind of operational capacity left in the conventional sense. But it's this threat of missiles and drones and attack from Iran that is making the journey for these ships into the strait so dangerous.
Merlin, as always, thank you very much for just talking us through all of those details. And I know you and the team are working very hard in order to just verify all those different nuances and facts. Merlin Thomas there from BBC Verify. Thank you so much, as always. Much more on our website as well. And we're continuing to monitor the skyline of Beirut, where we know that there have been strikes there, with our correspondents saying that people have been really concerned, understandably really worried as well. Also important to say that Israel has launched more strikes on Iran as well. But when it comes to Lebanon and Beirut there, our correspondent there saying that there was absolute shock after an apartment building was hit. So much more on the ongoing war on Iran, and of course that tranche of files on Wilson as well, coming up here on BBC News.
Virginie Vaidyanathan. We begin this hour with the latest on the US-Israel war with Iran, now in its 12th day. Concern is growing over the economic impact of the conflict. 32 countries have approved the largest ever release of strategic oil reserves. Members of the International Energy Agency will make 400 million barrels of oil available, aiming to curb rising prices. It comes after 3 commercial ships were hit in and close to the Strait of Hormuz today, with Iran again warning no oil cargo linked to the US and Israel will be allowed to pass. Well, let's speak to our business correspondent in New York, Michelle Fleury. So, Michelle, we're talking about the impact of the war on oil prices. Let's start with what the markets have been doing today.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the markets actually react negatively, and in terms of oil price, which everyone obviously has been paying such close attention to, actually it didn't make that much of a difference to the price. It sort of came down fractionally from about 92 to about $90 a barrel. It's been bouncing around there. I think what that tells us is that you've got the IEA on the one hand making this huge move, right, historic in size, and yet investors aren't reacting. And it speaks to the concern about how long this conflict may last. Clearly, they think it will potentially exceed the amount of oil that has been released, which, you know, if you think about 20 million barrels per day, roughly, is what goes through the Strait of Hormuz. That translates to about 20 days when you break down that 400 million.
Indeed. And what reaction, if any, have we had from the US administration to this? I mean, at the moment, is there a sense that the American consumer, or indeed other consumers around the world, are going to start really feeling the difference on this?
I mean, I think initially, certainly, if you talk to people filling up their cars, they are suffering real sticker shock at the moment. Obviously here in America, but also around the world, people are kind of trying to adjust their expectations. In terms of economists, they are talking about, you know, it all depends on how long this lasts. So, for example, we're already starting to see the price of the cost of fertilizer go up. That's another thing that's been affected by this. That probably takes about 6 to 12 months before you would kind of see that feed through to maybe prices at the grocery store. So it depends on how long this lasts as to kind of how severe the impact will be in global economic terms. But most immediately, right now, people are feeling it every time they go to the petrol station.
Okay, Michelle Fleury in New York, thank you very much for that update. Well, as we mentioned, Iran has effectively stopped tankers from using the sea passage which connects the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, the gateway to the Indian Ocean. And that's through which 20% of the world's oil is carried. Earlier, 3 ships were hit in the Strait of Hormuz as Iran seeks to impose an economic penalty for attacks from the US and Israel. So let's go through what happened. Well, Thailand's Navy says 23 crew members were rescued from this Thai-flagged cargo ship after it was hit while sailing through the strait. Thai authorities say the ship was targeted after departing from Khalifa port in the United Arab Emirates. Well, this is what we know about where the other 2 ships were attacked. A Japan-flagged container ship called One Majesty has been left with a 10-centimetre hole after an attack off the coast of the UAE. And a Marshall Islands-flagged bulk carrier called Star Gwyneth has reported that its crew are all safe after a strike from an unknown source damaged the ship's hull. That's around 57 miles north of Dubai. Well, let's discuss this all in a bit more detail. Let's speak now to a former US Navy Rear Admiral and the Senior Director of the Foundation for Defence of Democracy's Centre on Cyber and Technology Innovation, Mark Montgomery. Welcome to BBC News, Mr. Montgomery. First of all, what's your broad reaction to what we're seeing in the Strait of Hormuz right now?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Regina. And I'll tell you that those 3 ships should not have. I'm not sure they were all transiting. I recognize they were all hit. Certainly, the Thai ship should not have been trying to transit. It is not safe to transit right now. You need to wait for the United States to establish the conditions for it to be safe, and then for the United States to establish a convoy operation system to get them through as much as we did 40 years ago.
You talk about a convoy operation system. I was reading that you said that would take at least 2 weeks or something to get that up and running and would require a high ratio of warships to tankers. Just tell us how a convoy operation might actually work.
You're absolutely right. I've said 2 weeks. And by the way, that's the amount of time I think it's going to take to significantly degrade, because the first thing you need to do is significantly degrade the mines, the missiles, the drones, and the fast attack craft that Iran has that they could bring into the straits. Take about 2 weeks to continue to remove and degrade that capability. And then you establish, it starts with an unblinking eye, a staring IS, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance satellites that report down to the commander exactly what's going on. That's an improvement from 40 years ago when we didn't have it. And then you have I would have about 2 combat air patrol stations with 2 F-15s or F-18 fighter jets on there with a very specific advanced persistent kill weapon system rocket that's a counter drone rocket that's been 95% effective in Ukraine and in current operations here by the U.S. Against drones. And then I'd have to actually escort the ships air defense destroyers, so like U.S. Aegis, Arleigh Burke class destroyers. The British have a similar destroyer, as do the Japanese, Koreans, other navies, and the French. And then those escort, and I would probably, there's lots of ways you could do this, but I'd probably do 2 tankers to 1 ship escorts, and then have a series of these going through like a mother duck with a couple ducklings, and then, 5 to 8, 10 miles behind another pair.
That's a lot of resource, though, isn't it? And I'm assuming that's resource that could also be used in terms of combat with Iran.
That's right. But 2 weeks from now, those resources will be able to be repurposed. As we've, finished off the, 13 or 14,000 strike packages that are going to hit Iran over a 3-week period total. So I think those are the aircraft are available. Some ships are having to flow in. There's no doubt about it. And so they'll join, because the current number of what are called large surface combatants or destroyers, I think is insufficient to do this. The current number in theater. So you're going to need to bring more in. Maybe you'll get some from allies for this very defensive mission. And then you can begin the escorting it. That we escorted 2 or 3 per destroyer back in the late 1980s. We did 125 escort missions to move about 300 ships. There's currently close to that number of ships now. So this is going to take some time once you start. But you need to do this right. You need to do this safely. You need to do this with a minimum amount of military risk. Because the worst thing that can happen is if you start convoy operations and you have a successful attack on a tanker, the ability to restart convoy operations will be a much higher requirement after that.
You talk about convoy operations. I mean, what's the other way round? There isn't really, unless the conflict ends.
That's right. And even then, I'm not sure how secure it is. It depends whose terms it ends on. And then what I will tell you, there's a little bit of opportunity with cross-strait pipeline for Saudi Arabia across its peninsula to the Red Sea. And the United Arab Emirates has a pipeline down to Oman. And then, as your commentator mentioned, basically 20 days worth of fuel was just authorized for release from international stowage spaces.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear your thoughts on this. That's former US Navy Rear Admiral, Senior Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Mark Montgomery. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's return now to those strikes which have been happening inside Iran, and the US Central Command says that American forces have conducted airstrikes on more than 5,500 targets inside the country. Today, Israel said it had launched new wide-scale strikes on Iran, which it says targeted infrastructure across the country. Well, these images were filmed close to an airport in Tehran. Meanwhile, Israel's continued to hit the Lebanese capital, Beirut, as well as targeting sites of the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. The health ministry in Lebanon says that 570 people have now been killed since those strikes began. Meanwhile, Iran's Red Crescent says that nearly 20,000 civilian buildings, including at least 16,000 residential units, have been impacted after more than 12 days of war. And we're hearing that around 1,300 people have been killed since the conflict began. Well, let's speak now to Shada Houshmandi from the BBC Persian team in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the programme. I wonder if we can start by talking about what's been happening inside Iran. What more can you tell us about what damage has been done on the ground and, of course, casualties as well?
What we see in Iran, it's a very mixed picture. You see the ongoing attacks, also at the same time, tighter security, and also the population that's now reacting differently, and it's very anxious about the impacts of this war. So there've been more strikes reported across the country. In Tehran, people have heard explosions again, and there were reports about attacks in Marivan in western Iran. And the Iranian media also reported that there's been damages near Bushehr, where there is both a major port, a non-military port, and nuclear facilities, as we all know, and a hospital building was hit in the area. At the same time, Iranian media also is reporting that there are some security checkpoints that they've set, and they've been attacked by the Israeli drones, and it shows that really the fighting is not focused just on the military bases, but also like smaller targets as well in the city of Tehran. And as I mentioned, the public is anxious. Also, at the same time, we can't really see a uniform sentiment towards this war, and everybody is sort of waiting for the next few days to see if there is going to be any shifts in terms of how this war is going to go in the future. In terms of casualties, you mentioned some figures, but really, with the statistics coming out of Iran, even like the official ones, there's no way to verify them. Officials usually tend to either magnify the numbers or downplay them, depending on the situation.
And let's just briefly talk about Iran's military strategy. We've talked about the Strait of Hormuz, but as this war grinds on, what more can you assess about that?
It feels like it's now very much obvious for everyone that Iran's approach in the Gulf seems to be sort of spreading the pressure of the war across the wider region, so that especially focusing on the trade and energy. And the recent example is the drone attack on fuel storage in Salah port in Oman. And that's the kind of message they want to send, in a sense that they want to create chaos that will signal that this war is not worth fighting, so that they pressurize the Gulf countries as well as the United States to stop this war. And it's a sort of a do or die strategy, as they put it, and the IRGC is very much an expert in doing so. So asymmetrical war that is basically, there's no winning in it, but and it's not in no capacity, it's not conventional military fighting, but then it means that you raise the cost of conflict, and the other party will stop the war.
Okay, Shada, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on what we know from inside Iran. That's Shada from the BBC's Persian service. Now, Iran continues to retaliate, attacking its neighbours in the region. The United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defence says that Iran has fired more than 260 ballistic missiles in its direction since the start of the war, with 241 of those intercepted and destroyed. And several fuel storage tankers in Oman's port of Salalah have been struck by drones. Meanwhile, sources have told CBS News, the BBC's American partner, that an Iranian drone attack in Kuwait, which killed 6 US service members at the start of the war, was more severe than revealed, with dozens suffering injuries, including brain trauma, shrapnel wounds and burns. Meanwhile, some banks in Dubai and Qatar have evacuated their offices after Iran said it would attack economic and banking targets in the Gulf in retaliation for US strikes on a bank in Tehran. Well, let's discuss what's happening in the Gulf region by speaking to Kuwait's former information minister, Said bin Tefla al-Ajmi, who's now a journalist and lecturer. Welcome to BBC News. Good to have you on. First of all, Kuwait's always been a good ally of the United States. How has this latest military action altered the equation?
Thanks for having me. Indeed, Kuwait has always been a strong ally of the United States and the United Kingdom, but we have said all along that we are not supportive of this war. We don't want this war to be launched by the United States and Israel against Iran. We have always thought that only peace and negotiations can be the only venue for bringing about a better understanding rather than the mayhem of war.
Of course, the war continues on and Iran has been attacking your country. Just tell us what's been happening in the last couple of days and how you and other people are actually managing with, day-to-day life in a war.
Well, in Kuwait City, we haven't heard the sirens in the past 48 hours or so, and we were hoping that this means that the Iranian rockets are diminishing, as the American War Secretary Pete Hegseth said yesterday in his press conference. But apparently, they are aiming at Bahrain, our brother and countries of Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and just recently, a couple of hours ago, in Salalah, about 1,000 miles away from the Iranian border, south in Oman. Oman is the mediator all along between the United States and Iran in order to bring about peace. And this just shows the kind of desperation by the Iranians to hit everybody, hoping that that would pressurize the United States through its allies to stop the war against them.
You talk about Oman being a key negotiator. Of course, many countries in the Persian Gulf have been middlemen, shall we say, for trying to kind of reach some sort of diplomatic agreement. Is there any diplomatic way forward now?
To the best of my knowledge, there is an ongoing, behind doors and behind closed doors negotiations trying to stop the war. We know that there is a draft resolution by the only Arab member state in the Security Council to bring about a resolution to stop the war, i.e. namely Bahrain, which is the only Arab member of the Security Council now. Now, is this going to happen soon? The thing is that we think that it is only the Iranians and the Americans who can stop this war. The Iranians through whatever happens inside Iran itself, and the Americans through President Trump realizing that, as he said, there are no more targets to hit in their targets of banks or banks of target.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Former Information Minister of Kuwait, Saeed bin Tefla Al-Ajmi. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. This is BBC News. Well, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has just posted on X, and he says that he's been speaking to the leaders of Russia and Pakistan, reaffirming Iran's commitment to peace in the region. He says the only way to end this war is by recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, payment of reparations, and firm international guarantees against future aggression there. So a statement there from the Iranian president. Now, in Australia, one of the 7 Iranian footballers who was given asylum has changed their mind and decided to go back home. It comes amid huge concern for the national women's team, who stayed silent during the national anthem ahead of their first game at the Asian Cup last week. That led to accusations in Iran of the players being wartime traitors. A correspondent in Australia, Katie Watson, reports from Brisbane.
After an intense few days on the Gold Coast, Iran's football team, well, most of them, are on their long journey home. Their departure was upsetting for their supporters, with many left wondering who was made to get on that bus and who went willingly. Members of the Iranian community here followed their journey closely, many hoping more women would decide to stay. And then news that 2 more had requested asylum. And here's the proof. Player Mohaddeh Zolfi and Sahara Sultan Meshkekar, a member of the team's support staff, alongside Immigration Minister Tony Burke, who's handing out 2 more humanitarian visas. The women were reunited with their 5 teammates who'd escaped from their hotel the day before. At Sydney Airport, Australian authorities offered the squad a final chance to ask for asylum, interviewing the team members individually while they called their family to help them decide. Ultimately, nobody took up the government's offer. But this morning, another update. Zolfi now wanted to return to Iran.
In Australia, people are able to change their mind, people are able to travel. And so we respect the context in which she has made that decision.
According to the government, once the player had made up her mind, she contacted teammates who were already on their way home. They advised her to speak to the Iranian embassy to come and get picked up. But in doing that, she revealed the whereabouts of the women she was with here in Brisbane. So the whole group has had to be relocated.
What now awaits Mohaddeh Zolfi when she returns? Will her family now be safe, or will she face the consequences of having briefly considered staying? Katie Watson, BBC News in Brisbane.
Meanwhile, Iran's sports minister says his nation can't take part in this summer's World Cup in North America under any circumstances. Iran had been due to play all 3 of their group games at this summer's finals in America and could even face the co-host in the round of 32 if both finished second in their group. But the sports minister appeared to rule out the possibility of them taking part.
Given that this corrupt government has assassinated our leader, under no circumstances do we have the appropriate conditions to participate in the World Cup. Our boys are not safe, and conditions for participation do not exist, taking into account the evil deeds they have committed towards Iran. Over the past 8 or 9 months, 2 wars have been imposed on us, and several thousand of our people have been killed and martyred. Therefore, we definitely do not have the possibility for participation.
There's lots more on developments in Iran and the region on the BBC News website.
Well, we're joined by Berang Tajin from the BBC Persian service, which is used by 24 million people around the world, but predominantly in Iran. We're hearing that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has been re-beginning its wave of strikes across other nations. Just bring us up to date where we are with this.
Yes, they have started actually a couple of hours ago. They released a statement saying that they have started actually 38th wave of attacks on Israel and also neighboring countries, where they claim that these are American targets because these are facilities used by the American forces. But in Iran, we have had more reports of attacks on Tehran and also on the city of Marivan in western Iran, and a hospital has closed in the southern city of Bushehr on the Persian Gulf. Bushehr is the same city that hosts only nuclear power plant, and also Atom, which is the Russian company that is involved in nuclear power generation, has said that it has taken out 150 members of staff from the Bushehr power plant and taken them back to Russia. So that is what is happening in terms of war. And from what we are hearing from people in Iran is that since yesterday, when the chief of Iranian police kind of threatened everyone that if they share any pictures or videos with the likes of BBC Persian or even post them on social media, they will be targeted and prosecuted and punished. We are hearing messages from people who are very reluctant in terms of sharing pictures and videos. So our work in terms of finding out exactly what is going on and verifying that has become even more difficult. And also people are talking about many cities having some sort of a military atmosphere. There are many checkpoints guarded by Basij militia, which makes it very difficult to kind of live in the city or go around in the city.